What's up, Green Bay Packers fans? Welcome back, and as always, thank you for joining me. My name is Paul Brettel. Today, we're here to discuss the one big thing this Green Bay Packers team is chasing in these final four games of the season, something they hopefully can carry with them into the playoffs, and that's consistency. But first, before we dive into all of that, you know what to do. Hit like on the video, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. I do greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com, including the article version of the topics we're going to discuss here today. And for my Wisconsin sports fans, Packers, Brewers, Bucks, Badgers radio, download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app for all of your Wisconsin sports radio needs. You can find me on Sports Lead Monday through Friday, 3 to 6, multiple days per week. So like I said, we are going to discuss what the Packers are chasing right now, and that's consistency, specifically against some of the NFL's best teams where they've been lacking over the course of this season. Now at 9-4 on the year, the Packers are still positioned well. Yes, their chances of winning the NFC North were pretty much dashed last Thursday with their loss to the Detroit Lions, but for the most part, everything that they still want to accomplish this season is still out in front of them. Now, like I said, in order to accomplish those much bigger, grander goals that they have, they're chasing consistency against some of the NFL's best teams. Now, like I said, after the Detroit game, I'm going to make the assumption here that going into that game, Packers, who were winners of 7 of their last 8 games, most of you felt good about this Packers team. And coming out of that game, again, outcome wasn't what everyone wanted, but coming out of that game, you should still feel good about this Packers team. In the last video, please go check that out, went over a couple of reasons, but specifically the passing game and why that performance in the second half should have Packer fans feeling really good about where this Packers team can go. Now, again, they're not where they want to be. They're a good to really good team. The Lions are better right now, but that doesn't mean things can't change. It doesn't mean in January, if these two teams were to meet again, that the Packers cannot beat them. They're still striving to reach their optimal performance. And again, that consistency component is going to play a pivotal factor in whether or not they're able to accomplish that. So against the Detroit Lions, they had a slow start right out of the gate, which against that team, that high-powered offense, really good defense, that's really a no-no. Just about every team in football is not going to be able to overcome that. Honestly, the fact that the Packers were able to overcome it, take the lead, have a chance to take the lead late, a testament to their ability and their efficiency and fighting back in that game. But in their first 3 drives, they had 10 total plays. I believe the first possession was 5 plays and a punt, 3 plays and a punt, and then 2 plays and a fumble by Christian Watson. Detroit, and we discussed this after the game as well, I think this is 2 videos ago now, Detroit was extremely efficient on 3rd and 4th downs while the Packers were not. You know, Matt LaFleur has talked about it. We'll get into it here in a little bit in a second or two, but Matt LaFleur often says that many of these NFL games, especially one like on Thursday night, right, where it's back and forth, it's a close game down to the wire. Well, yeah, there's 60, 70 plays ran throughout the course of that game. Oftentimes it's going to be a handful of plays are actually what's going to be the deciding factor in that outcome. And for the Detroit Lions and the Packers, those deciding handful of plays were the Lions' ability to stay on the field on 3rd and 4th downs and the Packers' inability to stay on the field on 3rd and 4th downs. Packers were just 1 for 5 on their 3rd down opportunities in that game. Detroit, meanwhile, was 7 for 15 on 3rd downs. They were 4 for 5 on 4th downs in those games. So Packers weren't able to stay on the field. The Detroit Lions were, and they turned those opportunities oftentimes into points. As Matt LaFleur said on Monday, Packers just did not capitalize on enough of the opportunities that were in front of them. And he pointed to the fundamentals, regardless of what your position was, the fundamentals being one of the reasons why there was, again, not able to capitalize on the opportunities, overall lack of consistency. And when you have one offense who's either scoring quickly as the Packers were or struggling to stay on the field, it felt very boom or bust for them in that game against the Lions offense, who's converting 3rd downs, converting 4th downs, putting together these long drives, you get a really, really lopsided time of possession battle. Detroit held the ball for almost 13 more minutes than what the Packers did. The Lions offense ran 31 more plays than Green Bay. Green Bay's offense ran 45 plays. The Lions offense ran 76. Again, and some of that is self-induced by the defense, right? They couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 4th downs, but if also you're going up against the highest scoring offense in football and they're going to run 31 more plays than your own offense, let's just keep it simple. It's not going to be a recipe for success in this game. And when there are those limited opportunities, which the Packers offense had, it's an extremely small margin for error, right? Because you don't have enough opportunities. So the opportunities that you do have, you better capitalize on them. And on the possessions where you don't, where you go 3 and out, or you're not able to convert those third down opportunities, it's magnified more, right? Because you don't have as many opportunities to try to make up for that lost possession. So what it requires is for the offense to be extremely efficient, which, to the Packers' credit, especially in that second half, they really were through the air, which helped them stay in that game, which gave them an opportunity late to take the lead. But again, they were unable to convert in those critical situations. Unfortunately, a lot of the things we just described, slow start, struggles on third down, they were good in the red zone in this game, but a lot of those things we just discussed, not the first time that it's happened this season. First time the Packers played the Detroit Lions, they were down 24-3 at one point. They finished the game just 3 for 12 on third down, and they were 1 for 4 in the red zone. The Minnesota game, Packers found themselves down 28-7. They were 4 for 12 on third downs in that game. They were good in the red zone, but again, you're down 28-7. Game takes on a little bit of a different dynamic than if it's close going into that fourth quarter. So against two of the top teams in the NFC, Packers got off to slow starts, really struggled on third downs to sustain drives. And in week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles, well, they didn't get off to a slow start in that game. In fact, they had the lead early on. They still came up short against, again, one of the NFC's top teams. So really the commonality in those 3 games against opponents that they're going to see again in the playoffs, presumably, at least one of them you would think, the lack of consistency in those pivotal moments, and just from the start of the game to the end of it, has been a detriment to Green Bay, and it's something that they're still searching for, still something that they're trying to overcome, and they are absolutely headed in the right direction. But again, to reference these type of games are often decided by just a handful of plays. You never know when those handful of plays are going to occur, right? Like we can look at the Lions kicking the game winner at the end of regulation, and yeah, that was ultimately the determining play in the final play in the outcome. But there were a number of plays earlier on, some of which we've already discussed, that ended up playing pivotal roles in determining how this game ended. Packers gave up 2 fourth down touchdowns to Detroit. We just went over their first 3 possessions of the game. What if that fumble doesn't happen? What if they get one of those stops on fourth down? What if they pick up an additional third down in that game? How does the outlook of this game change? Again, you don't know when those pivotal moments are going to arrive, right? Can't just save your best for the end of the game. You can't always, you want to come out strong, but you have to maintain it throughout the course of the game as well. And so that consistency that the Packers are searching for is going to help them be better prepared for when those pivotal moments arise. Again, you don't know when it's going to happen, but you always have to be on your toes and ready for it for when that moment arrives, and playing at your best, executing the play at your highest ability, having really, really strong fundamentals, making sure that you're super sound in what your responsibilities are on that given play. Because again, we can point to so many different plays throughout that game. And if one of them swings different, one of them just goes in the Packers' direction, does the outcome of this game change? And as you face these top tier opponents, as you get to the playoffs, a lot of times these are going to be the deciding factors for the Packers, for any team, when you get into these high leverage matchups. Now, Tucker Kraft mentioned that the Packers came out the gates, not just him, but everyone. He really liked the aggressiveness that they were playing with against Detroit, but it sounded like, from how he phrased it, with that aggressiveness came a lack of technique. The fundamentals, as Matt LaFleur mentioned, maybe were brushed to the side a little bit in terms of trying to be aggressive, trying to make the big play rather than, as the old cliche goes, right, doing your 111th and trusting that the other 10 players around you are going to operate in the same capacity. So as a cohesive unit, you work together as a high functioning defensive or offensive unit within that game. And I asked Tucker Kraft, how do you harness that, right? Because you want that aggressiveness. I mean, you want 11 Tucker Krafts, right, at their respective positions on the football field. But that aggressiveness has to be harnessed or it can hurt you, which it sounds like to a degree that it might have during the Detroit game. He said it's all about intent and just focus on every play. For his position specifically, how he's going to operate, even if the run game isn't coming his direction, he's going to block every play like he's the point of attack. Like he's the lead blocker. He's going to run every route, again, even if the ball's not coming in his direction, like the ball is coming in his direction. So it's being very intent on what you're doing. It's being hyper focused on what you're doing. And again, harnessing that aggressiveness so it becomes a positive for you rather than detracting from what the team is trying to do. Now, having said all that, as Brian Gutekunst talked about during the bye week, one of the biggest goals for every NFL team and during the regular season, we've discussed this here before, is to make sure that you're peaking at the right time, that you are playing your best football down the stretch and when the playoffs arrive. I mean, we can look at last season as a prime example of this. On paper, Packers are 9-8. They're the 7th seed. They're scratching and clawing towards the end of the season to make their way even into being into the playoffs. That was on paper. On the football field, especially on offense, this was a group that was operating as one of the best teams in football during that span. So they get hot towards the end of the season. They go into Dallas and have a huge victory. They're on the cusp of winning in San Francisco and going to the NFC Championship game. Again, everything that happened prior in the season, the ups and downs of the early going, fighting to get back to 500, fighting to stay above 500, that all went away to the wayside because at the end of the season, again, when you had to win, when you're in the playoffs, they were operating at their best. They were playing their best football. And that's what every team is striving to do right now. Yes, you got to win games in September and October. Yes, it would be great to go 14-3 and just roll through the regular season. But you have to make sure you're also at your peak when those pivotal matchups arrive. And like I said, we saw the benefit of that last season. And I think what's really can be helpful for the Packers right now, again, we'll take a glass half full approach to this season, is that they've had their ups and downs, right? Like there have been stretches. Again, they won 7 out of 8 games. This isn't, as I said at the start of all this, there's plenty of reasons to be optimistic about this Packers team, where they're at and where they can potentially go this season. But they've ran into some adversity as well, right? Passing game hasn't been functioning. They've been without Jordan Love. Jordan Love's been injured. They've been dealt with injuries elsewhere. They've had to win in a variety of different ways this season. And that element can be really, really valuable to them come the playoffs. Because again, you're going to be going up against teams like the Lions, the Vikings, the Eagles in the playoffs. And those teams are going to take away what you do best. They're going to punch you in the face. They're going to show you something that you weren't expecting. And such a big, big element to overcoming that is how quickly can you adjust? Let's look at this most recent Lions game, for example. Lions came out and they made it clear, we're not going to let Josh Jacobs get going. According to Next Gen Stats, 9 of Josh Jacobs' 18 carries in that game were into heavy fronts. They were not going to let the run game get going. Then from the Packers' perspective, I think to a degree, credit to LaFleur for sticking to the run game, not trying to become so one-dimensional and pass-heavy, but that adjustment to the passing game, because if the Lions are daring you to throw the ball, if they're giving you those favorable matchups on the outside, Packers probably could have exploited that earlier than what they did. It was the second half where we really started to see the passing game take off. Could they have made that adjustment sooner? Could they have recognized what Detroit was doing sooner, pivoted to the passing game sooner, and then, again, is there an extra third down that's converted? Do they get an extra field goal in the first half? All of those little decisions, those one play here, one play there, can add up and can be the difference in a game that, again, comes down to the final seconds and is decided by a field goal. So now in the future, while yes, it stings in the moment, you wish you could have capitalized on the opportunities that were there. if another team plays you in a similar fashion, are you quicker to recognize it? Are you quicker to make that adjustment? And that's just one example, but all of the different ways that the Packers have had to win this season, the challenges that they've had that they haven't been able to overcome it at different times, again, that can be valuable come the postseason, because now if they get something similar or if they run into a similar situation, they can say, all right, hey, we've been here before. We know how to react in this situation. We know how to adjust. Here's what we're going to do. And that adjustment comes so much quicker. You're able to overcome it. And again, could be that one play, 2 plays, could be the difference in the game. I think another really good example of this was the Jacksonville Jaguars game. Jordan Love exited, I think it was in the third quarter of that game. And afterwards, I forget who, it might have been Josh Jacobs, but someone on the offensive side of the ball said when Malik Willis went into the game, Tucker Kraft just looked at everyone, said, we've been here before. We know what to do. Let's go do it. Let's go win the game. That's just one example, because Willis had started 2 games prior or earlier in the season. Packers had won both of those games. It's because of those past experiences of being in those situations where Malik Willis is now a quarterback, then now you have the confidence to win. If he has to step in, or again, that's one example. It could be how the defense is defending the run, how the offense, the opposing offense comes out in the passing game, whatever it might be. Pick an example. But because the Packers had been in a somewhat similar situation before, it came up again. There was no flinch. There was no hesitation. They knew how to react. So again, I think a lot of this can be valuable, and all of that is helpful in peaking at the right time, which is what the Packers are trying to accomplish, what every team is trying to accomplish. Again, we saw it last season. This team was operating at such a high level at the end of the season, despite a 9-8 record, despite being the 7th seed in the NFC. That is what the Packers are chasing right now, and that consistency element, again, for all of the reasons just mentioned, and I know I focused on the offensive side of the ball, but it's in every capacity, right? Consistency in getting after the quarterback, consistency in coverage, consistency with the offensive line. It's across the board, because there's been moments, right? I mean, we talked about last week, the pass rush was picking up steam. The few weeks before this Lions game, Josh Jacobs in the run game was the one shouldering the workload on offense. And then in this game, it's the passing game that provides the juice, the spark for the offense. We've seen the secondary come up with tons of turnovers, but as good as this Packers team has been at times, it still feels like they're still missing that full 60-minute game, right? Where it just all comes together for them. And again, glass half full, even without that, they're 9-4. Even without that, they have the 6th best scoring offense in football. And that shows you the potential, the opportunity that is out there for this group. But again, they're good. They're really good. But right now, the Detroit Lions are better. They're better in those key situations, from the defensive execution to the offensive execution, from the first minute to the 60th minute. The Lions are more consistent right now. And again, over the course of a 60-minute game, those handful of plays, it's a big, big difference, right? That's the big, big difference between being a good team and being a great team right now. And it doesn't mean the Packers can't get there. It doesn't mean they won't get there. It doesn't mean if they face the Lions again, they can't beat them. They just showed us they can hang with them. But they have to find that down-to-down, series-to-series consistency, and that's what they're chasing right now. So, again, everything's out in front of the Green Bay Packers, but right now this is what they're chasing. And, coming into these last couple games, trying to hit that stride, find that consistency element, that's the biggest thing I'm looking for, right? You want to win games. You want to go into the postseason with the highest, seed you can be in the NFC. But right now, you got the Seahawks, or they're taking on the Seahawks in Seattle this Sunday night. We've seen the running game against Miami and San Francisco shoulder the workload. We saw the passing game do it this week. Can those two units come together and gel? They're on the right track, and if that can happen, especially from an offensive perspective, I mean, good luck defending this Packers offense. What are you going to take away at that point? You devote more defenders to the box. Now you're light on the back end. There's one-on-one matchups for Jordan Love and his receivers. You put more on the back end to try to limit the passing game. Now Josh Jacobs has lighter boxes to run against. That's the opportunity that's out there for this Packers team, and that's what they're chasing. If you stuck with me this far, you might as well hit like, you might as well hit subscribe on the video. Greatly appreciate you tuning in. As I said, find me on Twitter at Paul_Brettel. Find all my work over at ESPNLacrosse.com and download the 105.5 ESPN Lacrosse app for all your Wisconsin sports radio needs. Until next time, friends, appreciate you tuning in. Take care.